Hi everybody. I'm going to continue working on the third assignment, or I'm going to continue working on the assignments, namely the third assignment in this class, CSE 4050. These are the assignments. I did a video on this first Git assignment. I did a video that talked about how to solve the second assignment, and today I'm going to record a video in which I show a way to solve the third assignment. This is an optional video. You don't have to watch this to solve the problem. It might even be better if you struggle with it on your own and try to get a solution on your own. And if you get stuck, then you can come back and check this video to see how I do things. There's many ways of solving these problems, and it's just good for you to just sort of work out your own way. I'm just going to show you the way I do it. So let's take a look at this assignment. It's called the API assignment. So create a web page that uses fetch to retrieve information in JSON format from a public API and displays it to the user. The sunset and sunrise times API is an example of a public API, but there are many others. Place your code in a file named API-test.html. Add your file to your remote GitHub repository and include a link to it in your next progress report. So this is the file. Basically, to solve this problem, we have to create this file, and which generates a web page, and then it makes use of some kind of public API. I'll show you how to solve the problem using the sunset and sunrise times API. So if you watch the other videos, you'll remember that I set up this repository. I called it CSE 4050, and this is the index file that was done first, and then there's this JSON test. So I talked about the JSON data exchange format, or data representation format. It's a way to represent JavaScript objects using text strings. So now we're going to, and this is the remote repository that's on GitHub. So we're going to work in the local repository, and that's here. All right, CSE 4050. This is the remote repository, my local repository. So I'm going to create a file in here. Let's call it what I asked for, which is API-test.html. And let's go ahead and edit that. So I'll open it with Notepad. And I don't use Notepad these days to work on this. I usually use VS Code. And I don't want to get into that right now. That's something that you can look at on your own. And there's other editors, a lot of other systems. You can use Visual Studio, you could use Xcode, you can use Atom, you can use, there's a whole bunch of them. So let's just put the, we're just going to say hi there. And let's go ahead and take a look at that. So if I open that up on the local machine, you'll see that says hi there. And this thing here, this is the developer tools window. So Control-Shift-I, that's how I opened it really quickly. I used Control-Shift-I. And I talked about this last time. So we can write to the console, and I normally do that when I'm doing development. So if we were to write to the console, we're going to do something like console.log. I'll say bye this time. But this isn't going to work because this needs to be. All right, I accidentally shut off the video recording. I started that up again. Let me make sure that's running. And that should say something like Yeah, good. That's running. So here, if I reload this, you know, it's not running the command. It has to be in a script element, obviously. I guess maybe it's not obvious. So there's the script tag. We're going to put this JavaScript inside of a script tag, and we reload that, and now we're writing into the console. And we can actually write into the document. There's a way to do that. How do we do that in JavaScript? It's something that you don't usually use. JavaScript to write into the doc. How do you do that? Is it just write? The write method. Write line, there it is. Document.writeLine. So I can do document.writeLine. Okay, I'll say. Just playing around here. And reload that. Document WriteLine is not a function. Document, small l. I made this uppercase, so it's case sensitive. I made an uppercase L. It should be a lowercase l. So let's go ahead and reload that thing. There it is. So there's the OK. This is the by. You see how that works? You know, the by is written to the console. That's the JavaScript console, which the user doesn't normally see. It's just visible in the developer tools window. But if we write into the document, then it shows up here. So, you know, this is good to learn about, by the way. So I know I'm going off on a tangent, but this is useful to know. So I'm going to create a div here, and I'm going to say 1. And then I'll create another, then we'll have the script element, and then we're going to say 2. And you'll see that that when the document, when the browser loads it, it starts parsing and building the web page as it goes forward sequentially in a forward direction. So it's going to print 1 in a div, and then we're going to write line OK, and then we're going to write 2. Actually, maybe we want to put this in a div, and like that. So we have 3 divs, 1, OK, and 2. 1, OK, and 2. Of course, the by is still there because, you know, we have this statement still right there. And if we look at the elements, you'll see that's what the body looks like. See, this is the document. There's an HTML tag, open tag, closing tag. There's a head element here, nothing in there, and there's the body element. See, actually, I didn't include a head element. I don't have a head section. I could put one in there. I could put one in there like that, see? And then we'll have something in here, like this is supposedly a required element in the head section. It's called title, and I'm going to put 1, 2, 3 in the title. Now this title will show up here in the tab. Watch this. See, there it is, 1, 2, 3. So the title is interpreted by the browser or whatever tool is going to read the file and decide what to do with this element and its contents. What the browser does is it puts it in the tab. And you'll see these other tabs. These are all comes from the title element in the HTML document. Take a look. So if we do a view source here, and look at this. So here's the HTML element, and there's a head element in there. See that? And there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. It's going to be a big document. I see the div, and this is where the head element ends. or the first, inside the HTML element, you have a head element, and then you have a body element. So here's the end of the head element. It's the beginning of the body element. You go down to the bottom, and you'll see this is the end of the body element, and then end of the parent HTML element. And there's all kinds of JavaScript in there. See that? This is all this JavaScript. There's the script tag. Here's a script tag, but it references a file with the source attribute, src attribute. This is a file that gets loaded, and it gets loaded into by the browser and is processed as if the file itself was listed inside the local script element like this one. You see all the divs. They're using these divs within divs, because here's a level 4 heading here, and then you've got these anchor. Let's call it an anchor tag, and these provide links in the document. So it's a big file. That doesn't show much there. So, but the head, I know, getting off on a tangent here. Here's the title. Remember, every head element is supposed to have a title element. So it says HTML DOM write method. There it is up there. HTML DOM write method. So this is the show source. It's showing it in a tab here. This is the HTML element write DOM. Sorry, HTML DOM write method. So that's a handy little tool there, and you've got other stuff inside that head element. I went off on a tangent a little bbit there. So coming back, let's. So this video is kind of for beginners. I'm going to get rid of this. I'll leave the div in there, and I'm going to do this. This is my for the title. It'll be the API assignment. All right, and then we have a div, and in this div, I'm going to add an ID attribute, and I'm going to call this. My the sunset element, and I'm going to up here. The browser properly interprets, well, not properly, but I'm not giving it a valid HTML file, but it does its best to try to figure out what it is that I'm showing. So to be formal about it, you're supposed to put everything in there. All these missing tags, you want to put that in there, and there's some other stuff you might want to put in there. But these days, browsers are very forgiving, and you don't have to adhere to the rigid specification of what a valid HTML is. So anyway, I'll put the body element in there. We've got this div, we've got this script. We're not going to use that right line. That's not common, by the way. And let's go ahead, and this is a way, this div element, I want to show you this. This is a div element. This is a div element. There we go. I'll just do it like that. And reload that. Here it is. This is a div element. So you can see there's the head section. It's got that title element. I'll collapse that. Collapse that, and then I'll expand this body element. Inside the body element, there's a div element here, and then there's this script, and then we close the body element there. All right, so I'm going to go back to the console, and what we're going to do here, I'm going to show you how to play with that. If the document, this is an object in JavaScript. You'll see it's right here. Document is a top level identifier, top-level variable that references an object that is used for interacting with the document, with the web page itself, because we refer to the web page as a document sometimes. And it's got this little sharp sign in front of it. And maybe that means, well, I don't want to get into that. And you'll see the document is everything. It's the HTML tag, and it's the head section and the body section. Look at that. So it's all like there, and it's visible inside from the console when we print this. I won't clear it. I'll just leave it like that. So, and the document has this document object. It has a function which is get element by ID. And I can pass in the element ID. And remember, this element ID, this element has an ID attribute called sunset. So we're going to get the element by the ID named sunset. Okay, we'll run this in the console. And it shows me this element. This is the div element with the ID equal to sunset. And we can... Once we get that element, we can change it's the text that are inside of it, and I can get at it with this attribute called inner HTML. So if I just look at that by itself, it shows me the string, the contents, and look at the contents. The string contents of this div element. It's not just this is a div element. It starts with a new line character, then it has this is a div element, and ends with a new line character. So this is a subtlety that you may kind of overlook, but it'll get you at some point in time. That's gonna mess you up, and I just want you to be aware of that. If we squeeze this, if I put all this on one line, we're going to remove that new line character. It'll still have the same result here, but you'll see, let me go back to this console. Did it save? Yeah, there it is. Look at this. Now the string, the inner HTML of this sunset div is just, this is a div element. So we can take this expression, let me do it like this. I can take this attribute. This is a property that we can set. So I'm going to set this to this is different. Okay, look at that. That's a string. So this inner HTML, I'm going to set it to this is different. Hit enter on that, and look at this. This is different. So we're changing the value on the fly using the console. So we can do that inside the document itself. So inside this script, inner HTML equals this is a test. All right, there we go. Let's save that and reload. This is a test. So look at that. It starts with this is a div element, and then this is what gets rendered. But then when the browser runs this script element, it immediately replaces this contents here with this new content. So we don't even need this. See that? Don't even need that. So this is an example of how to modify the document using JavaScript. How to modify your web page using JavaScript. This is a test. There it is. So we're going to use that to solve this problem, by the way. So I now talk about the fetch element. So we've got fetch, right? And in fact, it's probably better to use it in here. So fetch, look at that. I only typed FET and it's showing me this whole thing. So that's helpful. It's a function. Look at that. It takes an input and then has some kind of an optional, that question mark probably means optional. So we're going to ask for it wants some kind of a URL here, and I'm going to save that. Let's go back to the problem. I'm going to get rid of this. And I say use this, this is an example, the sunset and sunrise times API. Let's take a look at that. And this video is getting kind of long. So we offer a free API. So the API is Application Programming Interface. So whenever you have some execution environment that you're in, and you've got code that you're writing, and your code, I mean, it's in a language like JavaScript, or C++ or C#, whatever. The language by itself can't do anything. It needs to sort of interact with its container, with its execution environment. And so the API is a description of the interface with this container, with this execution environment. And or it's a part of it anyway, the application programming interface. It's a part of it's an accessible functionality in the execution environment where your program is running. It's my loose definition of it right there. So I'm not going to get into what REST is. You can read about that, representational state, something or other. It's not a very good name, actually. It's just a way to submit requests over the internet and get responses. So I'm going to skip over a bunch of this. You can read this and think about all this, but I reviewed this last night because I didn't want to take too long reading it while I was recording this video. So here's some examples of this gives an example right there. This is a way to access the sunrise at this given latitude and longitude. I think we can probably paste it right in there, see what it does. Look at that. It gives us this JSON right there. That's JSON right there. And that's interesting. The browser will show it to us. We can copy that actually. Look at this. We can do so much with this and play with it here. Remember the JSON? So I could create a string. I'm going to call it S, and I'll use a single tick, a single apostrophe here. Paste that in there, and whoops, that was a double right there. Oh, it says undefined. So let's see. Yeah, there it is. It's good. So then if I go JSON dot parse, this JSON is in uppercase. JSON dot parse converts the string, a JSON string, into a JavaScript object. And so it goes const O. So O is the object and S is the string. And it's saying undefined because, well, that's what this expression identifies to. So I'm not going to skip that. There's O. There it is right there. So we can look at that string. Now I use this JSON parse to convert the string that I copied. When we sent this in to this host, this is the host name. This is how you identify. That's the identifier of the host using what's called a domain name system in the internet. And then we used this protocol, HTTPS. So it was an encrypted communication channel. And HTTP is the hypertext markup protocol. It means a client, like a browser, sends a request to a server, like this web server, like the Sunrise API server. And then that server returns a response. So it's a request response protocol, HTTP. And HTTPS means the request and the response are sent over an encrypted communication channel. So that's the host, and this is the service or the the object that we're trying to access. So it's the name of it is JSON, and it's the name of the service, I guess, the API endpoint, whatever you want to call it. And then there's a question mark here. That means I'm going to give a name value pair. So the latitude is 36 point whatnot. And then this and symbol means, okay, I want to put another parameter in there, another key value pair, name value pair. LNG for longitude equals, and this number. So then the server replied with this, and the browser is displaying it for us. Other browsers might not do this. Chrome does this. So we took this, we copied that string, and we popped it in to the console of the browser. We put it inside these apostrophes. I didn't use a double quote because then that would match with these quotes that are used in the JSON string. So I want to use a single apostrophe so that I don't hit because this is already being used as the delimiter internally inside the string itself. So I got to use an apostrophe here. And then this is where I end the string definition right there. And then this string, I'm setting it, this variable s is now set to reference this string. And you can ignore this undefined. This is just the result of executing that line. So the browser says it's undefined. That's not a big deal. But if we type in s by itself, it's going to echo out the contents of that variable. And then so we passed this variable s, this identifier s, we passed it into the parse function of this JSON object, pre-existing JavaScript object called JSON. And that parses the string, it reads this string, it constructs a JavaScript object from it, and then we let O reference that constructed JavaScript object. We type O by itself, it's going to give us this handy little representation of what the object looks like. And the object has got, it's got two attributes. One that's called results, and the other one is status. It also has remember, all objects in JavaScript have a prototype. That's the parent that you inherit attributes from. So it's a prototypical object language, JavaScript. Prototypical, it's a language that has prototypical inheritance, that is. So any object that you deal with in the language has a parent, or a prototype, you want to call it, a prototype object. It's another object, it's a link to it. It's linked to it through this field name right there, underscore, underscore, proto, underscore, underscore. That's it. So every JavaScript object has a field that's called that, and that refers to another object, and that object has got all that stuff in it. And look, this other object normally has a prototype field as well. However, this one doesn't, because this is the root object and in JavaScript. So this is the end of the prototype chain. If otherwise, we'd have a proto within a proto within a proto. So it would be that's called the inheritance chain. It would end with this, which is it ends with this object here. That's the root prototype, the root object in JavaScript. So that's a quick overview of that. Anyway, we can sort of ignore that for now. And that's the results attribute has these subfields: astronomical twilight, begin, that's given as a string, and so on. This is how long the day is. It's 14 hours, 27 minutes, 7 seconds. The sunrise occurs at this time, the sunset occurs at that time, and so on. So we're going to try to extract the sunrise and display that. All right, so actually this is giving us the time in, is this Greenwich Mean Time? I wonder. So anyway, I better break up this video. I'm going to pause this and then restart it again. Let's do that. So this time here, I don't think it knows we're in San Bernardino. I think it's, although it could try to figure it out based on information that's passed from the browser to the server through these headers, these HTTP headers. But, or analyzing the IP address and where the packet probably came from or so on. But anyway, I don't think it does that. I think that this time is probably Greenwich Mean Time and GMT, I think. So this is, because I don't think that, let's see, what's the sunrise? Sunrise in San Bernardino. Today, what time is it? 5:40. See, sunrise is at 5:40. So here it's saying 5:01. So in Greenwich, England, it's sunrise is at 5:01, and that's probably without daylight savings time. I don't know. They're probably using daylight savings time over there. I don't know. So maybe it's off by an hour. But so let's. What we want to do is extract this. This string, I think. Is that how I did it? I did this already. These are, oh yeah. It has this formatted here. This is formatted equals 0. So let's going to add this here. I'm going to add that. Let's resubmit that. So taking the formatting off, so we're going to get a different value here. So if you look at sunrise, it's going to show this. This is a standard notation. You can see the 501 in there. So we want to use the standard notation. That's what's needed for the JavaScript language to convert this into a date object, and then we're going to convert it to our local time. So let's get this stuff in our code. So we basically need to request this thing, and where is it? So we use fetch here. In fact, we can work. I don't usually do it like this, but I think I could do it like this. If we use fetch, and we're going to type in this, type this in. Okay, and then what fetch does is fetch returns what's called a promise, because it takes time. And JavaScript is a single-threaded callback based async. That's the word, asynchronous. It's an asynchronous execution environment, an asynchronous language. I'm not sure what the exact terminology is there, but what it does is in order to get single threaded code, so you just want to write simple. You don't have to worry about threading issues. So what you do is you make things a little more complicated by having long-running function calls run in a separate thread automatically, and then when they're done running, they call a function that you pass into it. That's called a callback. So anyway, that's an asynchronous execution situation, I guess you call it. So here's the then, and here then this will return an object. Actually, this then it takes a function that gets a chunk of data. And that function, then what we can do is look at that data. So let's do it like this. We're going to do, I'll say data. I'll do This isn't working very well. Let's get rid of that. Messed that up. Trying to kill that, but it's not working. All right, let me just do it. Do it the easy way here. So it's window dot data equals data, and we're gonna go ahead and stop that like that. So data is now a global object, and here it is. There's the response, and this is the URL. And let's see, we're going to look at this. This is the it does. Oh, here's the body. What does it show? It's a readable stream. I can't remember how to do this. Let's see. Let me do it in code here. So it's fetch. And let's go ahead and put this, I'll do it like this. We're going to const URL equals this whole business. And then we fetch that URL. I got to look this up. So JavaScript fetch. There it is, using fetch. So you got to read through all this. Like I've been through this a lot already, so I can't remember all the details. So it's going to look like this. Okay, what we need to do is, oh yeah, it returns a response. I was jumping. So fetch, when we fetch something, this URL, then it's going to return a response. So it's going to, it takes a function, this is the callback function, that gets a response, and then we need to do something with the response. And let's just print the response. Let's do that. All right. So that's the callback function. Maybe I'll do it like this so you can see that. So we have a function, and this is the callback function, CB I'll call it. And this callback function gets a response, and what do? We take the console and we look at the response. We see maybe the response object has a toString method or whatever. Let's see if the system can render that for us in the console. So let's take a look at that. So we call fetch, and it returns what's called a promise. Do it like this. So we call fetch, we're going to get a promise P, say. All right, and then once we get that promise, so it won't give us the answer right away. It doesn't block and wait for the API to run and give us the sunset, because that takes a long time. It's got to go over the internet, and that's an unknown amount of time. So JavaScript doesn't want to block and wait for that. So it's why we have to pass fetch is what's called returns, this call to fetch returns something called a promise. And the promise represents a process that's going on in another thread. But this promise has a function called then, and we want to say, all right, when the promise is complete, when it completes, then call my callback function. There we go. All right, so yeah, I'm just going to take this out. I'll leave it in there. So the this is our callback function. Just gets something called a response. Let me show you this first. I'm going to comment this out. Okay, let's take a look at this. This and let's do this. This is a test. Instead of that, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say, let's print the, let's call this this callback function. It's going to print this response, right? So, not going to do that. Not going to do that. Probably I'm getting too confused here. Let's go ahead and do this like that. Here's the URL. Here's our callback function. We just print this response. Here we call fetch, passing in the URL. We get a promise. The promise, we give it our callback function. And that means it's going to just print this log here, right? It's going to just print whatever it gets. And this we're not going to worry about. Let's go ahead and see what happens. There it is. It prints a response, and that's it, okay? So actually, I don't see, where's the answer here? It's type, this is URL, and so that's a response. The response is a stream, actually. It says it's a stream. Look, this prototype, and it has a constructor field probably. Here it is. It's a some sort of a stream object or whatever. When we go back here, we look at this. When we get this response object, it represents a stream of incoming data. Now we know that that incoming data is going to be in a JSON format. So this response object represents the stream of incoming data. It has a function called JSON, and when we call that function, we're saying, hey, interpret this incoming string of bytes as a string representation of a JavaScript object. So we call it like that. So it's response.json. So in this function here, this callback is sort of complicated. When this thing calls, it's going to give us this response object, and we can call JSON on that. And listen, it doesn't give, it's not like it gives the string itself, see? It doesn't give the string itself because this JSON itself is this JSON, this call to JSON returns another promise. So it's another promise, another P. I would call it P2. I could just use P, it's all right, but it might be confusing for people. This is the first promise, P1 we'll say. So when the first promise, we pass it this callback and say, hey, call that. And in the callback, we get this response object. And on the response object, we got to call its JSON method. And that returns another promise called P2. And so what do we do when we get a promise? Well, the promise is not complete yet. So you got to tell it, you got to give it another thing to call. So we're going to pass in another callback, call it callback 2. So this one's going to be our callback 1. This is pretty complicated, right? And then, so we have a function here, callback 2. And this, when this JSON, this promise 2, when it calls this callback, it's going to pass in the data itself. It's going to pass us the parsed JavaScript object. That's the one we got to print. There we go. Complicated, isn't it? This is pretty complicated, but I tell you, it took me a long time to figure this stuff out, okay? So it's not easy, it's complex. And once you figure it out, you could do a lot of stuff with this, okay? You can build apps, you can build web apps, you can build mobile apps, all kinds of stuff. So it's worth learning. And so when this second callback runs, we're going to print the data. So that's going to give us this business right there. It's going to show us that string if we got it right. And so that's where it prints it right there, okay? So let's test it. Here we go. That's it. That's not it. That is not it. Is that the string? This is data. Oh, no, yeah, it is. It's not a string. This is the data itself. It's not the string. The string is comes in. The string is, we're not pulling out the string. So if we wanted to pull out the string, we'd have to do something else. So this is where we call JSON. This response has got, let's see, this response object. Response interface of the fetch API, okay? We can pull out we can pull out a blob. That's if you get an image. We can pull out a JSON object, or we can pull out a text. Let's do that. So here we're going to pull this out as text. See, I pulled it out as an object using that JSON method. But let's tell this response object that represents the incoming data stream. Let's tell it that we want the stream, just consider it plain ordinary text. And then we're going to console log that plain ordinary text, okay? Let's see what that does. There it is. Now we got it working the way we want. Well, at least not the way we want, but the way we understand it. So now we don't need that. We want the JSON actually. So we want the object. So now we're going to get the object. But this object, this data object, if you look at it, all right, let's do the log. Let's look at that. Go ahead and run that again. Here's the object. The object has a results field. So data.results. And if we look in results, we're going to see that it has sunrise as a field right there. It's going to give us that string. Watch, we're going to print that string. So that's sunrise. So that should print the string. That one, that baby right there. Let's take a look at that. That's what it's going to print. In fact, let's do this. Let's see if we actually get that thing printed, okay? And we're going to see if we're going to, this should print it twice. This is, you know, we think this. And then it says, and I'm going to put a plus there. It says that, and I just put a space in there. So that's what we think it's going to say. Let's see what it actually says, just to see if we get it right. We think this, it's a, look at that, we nailed it. There we go. So this this callback here, this data now is a this data is that object that we can see has a results field in it, and the results has this sunrise field. Now what we want to do is sort of put this, we want this to be San Bernardino time. So we're going to create this this date object. I think we can just pass that right in there. I think we just passed that right in there. And I got to remember, it's just, I'm guessing at this. I did work this out last night, so I didn't want to spend a lot of time showing you how I worked it out, but actually I'm working it all out again, so I am kind of going through it again, but I know it a little better today. So there it is, that's it, right? So we just want to, this is, and look, it puts it in PDT, see? Look at that. And it's 22 hours like that, see that? So this is 10 o'clock. Oh, that's not right. And the issue there, of course, is that this latitude, longitude, these are not correct. So we got to look that up. So I'm going to say longitude of San Bernardino, California. There it is. So 34 point that. All right. That's the latitude. And then we got to get the longitude in there. See the minus sign, that's because it's west. See that west there? So that's negative. If it was east, that would be positive. So we're going to leave that as negative. So we're getting this, I saved that, yeah. We're getting this crazy number here at 10 o'clock in the evening. That's not our sunrise time. So we just fixed that. Now it says 5:39 and 12 seconds. May 29. 5:39 and 12 seconds. That's the sunrise, San Bernardino. And you remember that? We said it, where was it? We asked for that sunset. Let's do sunrise, San Bernardino. But look at this. This is May 25. It says 5:40. Hey, what's going on there? We're off by a second. This says 5:39 and 12 seconds. This says 5:40. So it's rounding. 12 seconds, that should round down to 5:39. So look, we're getting some discrepancy there. We're off by a second. Someone is wrong by at least a second. Anyway, there's all kinds of little assumptions, underlying fine-tuning assumptions that are going on there, like, maybe they used a slightly different longitude than we're using, because they consider this. So longitude represents what point is San Bernardino? The center of San Bernardino City, the center of San Bernardino County, the edge of the county. I mean, so we don't know. When we look at this one here, we don't know what longitude and latitude they're using. Well, we know the ones we're using, and so anyway, that's close enough. We're within 1 second. But how do we want to write this out? So, and we want to display it in a document here. We don't want it just in the console. So this date object, and you got to read up about this. This is something that I've been doing. So you got JavaScript date. This is an important constructor in JavaScript, important function called date. It's complicated because dates are not simple. What's epochs and timestamps and universal time and local time and daylight savings time. It's just a lot to time zones. It's very complicated. Dates are very complicated, and so a lot of that complexity is hidden away from you normally in an API like JavaScript API, the JavaScript language. They provide convenience functions like this date object to give us stuff. And so it's get hours is what I wanted. Is it get hours in there somewhere? Get minutes, get hours, returns to hour, 0 to 23. Okay. So we're going to do this. We're going to do this document object here. This is what we're going to do. Inside this callback, we're going to call get hours. Now that should say, it should just give us 5 because it's, remember the time was what was the time? It was, I forgot what it was. Whatever it was. Yeah, 5. Should be 5. It's going to give us a 5 for get hours. Our date object here, dot get hours, is going to give us a 5. We're going to set that into our inner HTML. Then we're going to render it there. Let's take a look at that. There's the 5. Nice. So we're going to put, I'm just going to do it like this. I'm going to put a colon there. And then let's pull out the minutes now. Get minutes. And go ahead and get that. There it is. There's our 5:39. I'll leave the seconds out. I'll just make that nice and put a little AM on there. And see how we do it incrementally, just make sure everything's working. And so the, well, I could do the whole thing. You know, I could do something like this. I could say something like, split it up onto 2 lines here. Sunrise today in San Bernardino is, and that's string concatenation. Use that plus operator, okay? And there we go. Let's take a look at that. Close this out. Here's our web page. Sunrise today in San Bernardino is 5:39 a.m. There it is. We got it. So that's, well, I want to go a little farther. This is kind of messy. You wouldn't normally make it look like this. In the script, would look something more like this. I'll show you how someone who's sort of used to doing this would do it. They would start with calling fetch. Let's do it like that. We're going to grab this, fetch, we pass in the string, and then we're going to call then, and that returns a response object. Response. I'm sorry, it calls a callback, it calls a function, our callback function that passes a response object into it. And how do we do that? So once we get the response, what we do with the response object is that we call the JSON on it. Let's see. And this, we don't even have to call return on it because it's automatic. I don't want to get into the details now. And this gives us data. I'm going to skip over a bunch of stuff here. And once we get that data, we're going to do this. I'm going to do it all in, I'm going to do the fancy approach here. Once we get the data, we take this get element by, and we're going to set that to this business right there. Oh, we need to do all this. We need to do this whole thing. So I'm going to just do that. Let me just do that. There is that. So once we this data runs, we're going to execute this code and get this data object, and then call get element by ID, set its inner HTML to the rest of this business. And there we go. So this is how you would normally, you might see it. I broke it down into its little steps there, but once you do a lot of this, then you start following a slightly different, not slightly different, you follow a different kind of organization, and people that are used to working in the language, they would know how to read this. They would read the, oh, the fetch, it's a promise, and then this runs, and then this runs. It would take the data, so you just go through it kind of quickly. Well, let's test, make sure that still works. And that works, yep. So that's how you would, someone might normally write it out like that. but we broke it down. We broke it out so that we could see it in more detail. All right, so that's that. Just going to wind things up real quickly here, just so that you see how I finish things up. This is the repository, and there we go. Go into Git Bash here, and if you look, you'll see that the API test HTML file has been added. I'm going to go ahead and add that in there, and then I'm going to commit it. And now I'm going to push it to my remote. Failed. What happened? What the heck? What the heck? Okay, failed to push. Some refs, it was rejected. So I needed to, probably I pushed something in there. Let me just double check on this. So basically, I want to make a copy of this API test just in case it's copied out onto the desktop. And I'm going to do a pull. What does my repository look like? Oh, it's got this file. You know, I configured this so I could see it online, and it added this file. And so I need to do a pull. So I'm going to do a git pull. So you see that file is not here. So this is, I'm using -a because I want to see all the hidden files. It's not in there. This underscore, oh, that's not hidden, by the way. It's underscore config. It's not listed here. So what I want to do is pull and some sort of a merge here. And there it is. That's that underscore config. And what is this API test? So git status, your branch is ahead, nothing to commit. So now you can see here, there's nothing to commit because it merged this file in, and I already committed this into my local repository. But my local repository, the main branch of my local repository is ahead of the remote by 2 commits. So I need to push. I know I'm going over this quickly and this is confusing. So I'm going to refresh that. And there it is. There's the API test here. And this also should be visible now. I forgot how to look at it. It was it CSU, something like this, CSUSBDT.github/CSE 440, is that it? Oh, no, not com, I think it was .io. Oh my God. There it is. And here's the API test. So now it's, there it is. Sunrise today is 5:39. So I got it published through GitHub to those GitHub pages. Anyway, that's it. I think we'll stop right there. And that's all.